Oh, hey there, friends. What is going on? Welcome to another episode of the Barado Podcast. So, before we get into today's episode, it is a fun one. We talk a lot about the creative world, being new parents, the educational system. It's just a lot of nuggets in here I think you guys will really get a kick out of. And of course, I'll leave all the details of the guest, David, his description, his social media handles, all that. Before we do launch into the episode today, I did actually ask on Threads, which if you don't follow me on Threads, it's my same handle at the Barado. But I did ask, what podcast questions do you have? And I'm going to give a shout out to Good Next DAVD. How do you qualify guests whom you invite to your pod? Personally, for a while, when I first started my show, it was only friends, coworkers, people I knew and hung out with all the time that I know I can have a really good conversation with. I think as my podcast grew, I became more and more comfortable talking to strangers, which that's all my podcast is now. Is I usually just send out either a DM or in this case, I sent something out on Threads, in which case I got about 10 inquiries, people wanting to come on the show. And to the day, I mean, a lot of the guests that I talk to, I'm actually really good friends with. I've never met them in person, but I started talking with them, in the DM, and then eventually it led to text and video chatting. And again, a lot of my good friends came from this podcast. So if you do have a podcast or you thought about it, I would say first start with friends just to get comfortable talking with people. Next, I would just throw something out there. So personally, I've created a Calendly, which is public, and you can, create this for free as well, where you would just create a calendar and you could send an invite or, you can create a Google number if you want, depending on how you do your podcast. Me, I use ECAMM Live, so everything is done via link where people could join kind of like a Zoom. And then I just send that link out on my Calendly. So when someone books a time on my calendar, it literally sends them a link, they join, and boom. When they join, I'm recording, and that's the podcast. It's just that simple. So this is just for me as a podcaster and a creator. I'm always looking for ways to just connect with people. And whether I, know you or don't, I'm just not afraid to talk to people anymore. And I think that's the beauty of podcasting. So hopefully that answers your question. But if you guys have more questions like this, head to Threads. Let's keep the conversation going there. But without further ado, enjoy today's episode.
It's cool having a device in your hand and creating something from it. I think we get so used to iPhones that it's like, even that's such an incredible tool that we don't realize how incredible it is. We just get bored with it.
Yeah, it's so true. And, I think because we use it for everything, the features and the capability of what it can actually do, like the real capabilities of, we forget about that because we're scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or something. And we forget that you have a 4K freaking $4,000 camera on you.
You're just funny. It's funny, the way you tell the story and everything.
Funny how?
Come here though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you? We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Are you ready?
We like it a lot.
It's not bad. I mean, in fact, I even like AirPods. I kind of like the headset you're wearing versus the AirPods sometimes, like in terms of
Agreed.
A microphone. And I do a lot 100%. of running outside and the audio going in is great, but then like if I get a call, it's not as good as like the OGs.
It's not as good, yeah. Running, I've been doing more of the if I'm running inside, I'll use the AirPods, but if I'm running outside, lately it's no music, just my breathing and the ground and nature and cars passing by, and I like it. I still track my run, obviously,
right?
But it's great. Just better.
Dude, I would love to get, we're recording, by the way. I get right into
nice.
Nice. So I'd love to know more about that because I've tried that before and I hear, I'm a big fan of Huberman and a couple of the experts in some of that space. And they always talk about that, especially the breathing with the running and the no noise, no distractions. And I'm like, I've tried it and it does, it's tough. It's tough at first.
You know what I noticed when I wear the AirPods, and it may be because I'm thinking about it, I'm actively thinking about it, and that's why I notice it. I feel actually a little bit foggy brained. I feel like foggy. I don't know why. And it might be because I read something or heard something from Huberman. It might be that.
Right.
And then I'm like subconsciously thinking about it. But I just feel a little bit sharper, a little bit more alert. I do agree that if you have music at a certain pace, it can help your run. There's no doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's also proven. So you have to find like a balance. I guess it depends on the run, how I'm feeling it. But
yeah,
I do think without it is beneficial too.
Do you listen to audiobooks or podcasts or anything while running?
Not while I'm running. No.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of people do that. Even some legit runners, whatever that means. some more serious runners, they were saying like, hey, listen to this episode of this podcast during the run. I'm thinking, wow, I don't know if that motivate me to run. I don't know if it would. But I'm more of a fan recently of podcasts in general. But we'll get into that and my thoughts on that shortly.
Yeah, dude, right on. Well, first, I'll leave your site, your Instagram, all that in the description below, so people could kind of get a full bio of you. But if you can, give us the Cliff Notes of who David is and all
absolutely.
That.
So I'm David Kovacs, along with my wife Angela. We got 4 beautiful kids. We've been married going on 17 years. Our oldest is 15. Our youngest is 4. Nice. So there's a nice gamut. 2 boys, 2 girls. We live in southeastern Michigan in White Lake. Been here all my life. Been born and raised here. I'm the oldest of 5. I have a twin brother who I'm 3 minutes older than. Nice. And we've been wedding photographers now for a number of years. I think going on 4 years full time. Prior to that, I was kind of in the corporate world, in the automotive. Obviously, if you're in Michigan, you're somehow connected to the automotive industry. It's inevitable. Yeah. I was on the product management side, marketing, sales, all that good stuff. Now doing this, and it's kind of become, it's not a weekend warrior type thing. Now it's like full time, all in. No other means of income, if you will. And my wife does this together with me when there's 2 photographers, but it's just really changed the trajectory of our life and our dynamic at home. And I don't encourage people to go and do photography. I encourage people to go do something that gives them meaning and fulfillment.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. Well said. Talking like a true creator, because that's, it's interesting because you said 4 years, right? Full time. 4 years full time. But how long have you and the wife been messing around with photography?
Yeah, not much more before that. I mean, I'd say 7, 8 years, and we picked up cameras because obviously our kids are growing up. That's kind of cliche, but it is true. I didn't have an interest when I was young. I didn't have a relative who had a camp. None of that. But I did meet a person on Instagram. Who they did some night photography. I messaged them, oh my God, that's amazing. I live near there. Long story short, they live 10 houses down from me.
Stop.
We became friends. He's a Fujifilm professional. He's actually on their team. He's a great photographer, landscape photographer. He gifted me a camera, a Fujifilm camera, when we went to California on our 10-year anniversary. He said, take this, take some photos, see what you do. And when I came back, he just gave it to me. And I think it just kind of went off from there. Like, man, this is cool. It's cool having a device in your hand and creating something from it. I think we get bored. No. We get so used to iPhones that it's like, even that's such an incredible tool that we don't realize how incredible it is. We just get bored with it.
Yeah, it's so true. And, I think because we use it for everything as well, it kind of, the features and the capability of what it can actually do, like the real capabilities of, we forget about that because we're scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or something. And we forget that you have a 4K freaking $4,000 camera on you. I mean, there's amazing. I forget which creator it was, but he's done shots for like Netflix, because Netflix, typically you want to use a red. So typically when you're shooting 8K or 4K that. And then he created something without telling his followers or anything with the iPhone 15 Pro.
Oh, nice.
And then he didn't say anything. And then he did a recap video afterwards. He's like, hey, by the way, that wasn't a red.
Amazing.
That was an iPhone.
And everyone knew him to shoot with a red, right?
Correct. And so no one had any idea.
To that.
No one had any idea. So,
exactly.
When you look, and that's why I asked how long you guys have been doing it, because I think it's fascinating how, 8 years ago, if it's a hobby now, 4 years ago, it's a career for both of you, which congrats, by the way, on that.
Thank you.
It's now you can openly admit to friends and family and no one bats an eye.
Yeah. It is.
But 8 years ago, when you were like, it's a hobby,
Yeah.
If you were to say I'm a content creator, I'm a photographer, I'm a filmmaker, people were like, "Is everything okay at home? Like, you guys okay?"
It's almost unheard of. You rarely heard people. And me and my wife, obviously, because we're on Instagram and we're on social media. Side note, Tony, I asked this question on Instagram this morning. When I say the words social media, without thinking too much, what's the first app you think of? Go.
Instagram.
That's the response I'm getting from like, so far it's like 100 people, and it's all Instagram. Two people said TikTok, one person said Twitter. But everyone says Instagram. It was just a thought that I had this morning while having coffee. I'm saying, when you say social media, I only think Instagram. I don't think like LinkedIn or whatever. But anyway,
yeah, it's weird.
Sorry.
In fact, I will say, like, if you gave me more time to think about it, I would say the internet. Like, that would be my answer.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I'm on Instagram probably too much, and I think that's why I think more social media.
Yeah, we're all kind of addicted. I know that word has a lot of stigma, kind of heavy, but I mean it in an honest way, not in a good way or a bad way. It's just we mindlessly scroll. People taking their phones to the toilets, and so it's like kind of mindless and stuff. We got to be careful. But to piggyback on what you said before, if you would have told people years ago, hey, we're going to be photographers, we're going to be this and that, they would have thought, you're right. Is everything okay at home? Is it a side gig? Are you struggling for money? All this and that, because that's what it's stigmatized as. But I think that's changed a little, but in fairness, not too much, until people see that you're actually doing it. They need to see it.
That's right.
When you're in the process of doing anything creative, at the beginning, there's this excitement around it that people are excited for you. But what my wife and I noticed is the more we do it, the more we actually had family recently forget that we do this full time. It was someone in the family, and she thought, she just completely forgot that we do this full time. And I was like,
so
no, it's been like this for a while. So it's weird to re-explain to people, because it's still not a normal thing. And you would know that because this is your gig. This is what you do.
Right. Exactly.
And so you know everything I'm feeling and explaining.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. I mean, even my parents and my close friends, I even had a conversation with my buddy the other day, because we were going back and forth on, like, you have 4 kids, so maybe you could relate with this, but a lot's changed, and I'm 38. So the education system, probably room for maybe a different podcast, you and I, but I have very strong beliefs raising my newborn daughter now, but I never push those beliefs on people, or I don't discourage people to do anything, because I love school and I think everything's great, but there are, like anything, there's some opportunities in this country, I think, of that. So we're having this debate back and forth, and he goes, hey, this is how I'm doing things with our kids, but it's costing me an arm and a leg, yada, yada, yada. And I go, yeah, that's why we're not doing it. And he goes, what do you mean? And I go, well, we don't do childcare. Like, we both work from home. Like, we're very fortunate that we have this career. And he's like, but how can you afford to pay rent? And I go, bro, you have 2 kids in childcare. That's like a salary. That's annual.
That's the rent.
Yeah. What are you talking about? Like,
you just paid the girl at the childcare who's going to be on TikTok and Instagram all day long watching your kid, instilling their values on your kid. So I think even without saying too much, Tony, I think we totally agree. Yeah. The thing is, you mentioned about instilling the values in the kids. You didn't say anything about, it's time away from them and all the cliche stuff. That's the most important thing, is the values thing.
For sure.
And I just went down this rabbit hole of, and this is related to what you said. Why is the school system the way it is? Why are there these weird bells that sound like factory bells? And you know what I'm getting at. It's all based on the Prussian Empire, late 1800s. That's why the U.S. is the way it is. Right. They wanted obedient workers in a structured way to minimize thought, minimize creativity.
Well, we know who funded. Funded the education system? No,
I don't.
Rockefeller.
Well, there you go.
And he has a great quote when he funded the education system back in whenever it was. And I'll try to actually find the quote and link it up before I post this. But it was something along the lines of, like, I'm not trying to raise a country of educators, or I'm not trying to raise a country of entrepreneurs. I'm trying to raise an educator, or I'm trying to raise a country of workers, or something like that.
Right.
Was his main goal is like, if he can raise a country of workers,
right,
he wanted to be the entrepreneur. He wanted to be the dude facilitating. So I think the education system has kind of like kept that mentality, maybe unknowingly.
Yep.
You know, I don't think there's like one person up there, whether it's our government or the education system, whoever's on. I don't think they're like sitting on top of their ivory tower and saying, all right, so we're going to have, we're going to teach them this because we want them to be factory workers and slaves forever. Like, I don't think that's the case, but I think just like our entire government, really, but mainly just like the president of the United States, Joe Rogan has a great bit about it on one of his stand-up specials years ago, where he's like, he goes, if Thomas Jefferson could come back and look at what we're doing, he goes, you guys are still doing this one president thing. Like, he's like, I wrote that shit. We signed it with a feather. Yeah. Like, you're still doing the same things.
I like that.
And it's so true, because we really haven't changed a lot. And the fact that we have one president running everything, and, we just need to like kind of like change our attitude a little bit with some things. And I think that's why, just kind of full circle, going back to being creators, when people do hear that you have this weird career of being a creator, people are so stuck in that, like, but I wasn't taught that in school.
Yeah.
And that is the power of what Rockefeller was talking about, is the 8 billion people on this planet, 33 million in the US, whatever it is, we were all instilled in this, like, okay, trigonometry, AP physics, like dissecting a frog. Like, we all were taught that bullshit, to where we had to rely on people smarter than us to educate us and to also, give us employment. So when someone like yourself is at a party and you're like, hey man, I'm a photographer, and they go, oh, as a hobby? No, like as a career. Like, we have 4 kids, we do this. And it's so mind blowing to them, because we weren't taught that for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And we still, and now it's actually transitioned into, it's fun to talk to people about this. It's not a pain to explain it. We've simplified our message around it, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't have to go into the detail of, well, how do you do insurance? You pay for it. It's super expensive, and it's and you don't need it all. How do I put it? There was another creator who I talked to recently. He's like, yeah, no, we're good. We don't get sick often. So we've risked it. And for now in our lives, we've chosen not to have health insurance. We've got dental. We pay for that, but we're pretty good. And they've been at that for like 2 years. Now, one could say, oh, it's so risky. It's like, everything's a risk. Everything is a risk. Yeah. I dropped my kids off at school this morning. Driving that 2 minutes is probably riskier than me jumping on a plane and flying to Florida. Right?
No doubt.
Mathematically speaking, it's actually riskier, right? Yeah. But are you just going to, it's so risky. Everything's risky. So you're just going to cuddle up and do nothing?
Yeah. And hey, you know what also is risky? Again, same buddy I was having this conversation to, because he has healthcare at a corporate job. Yeah. So do we, by the way, but we pay monthly for it, because you can actually do that. But he has his job, and he's like, hey bro, like we pay for insurance, like, just in case. And I go, yeah, just in case. But you know what also is risky? You're paying $400 a month for 10 years. Yeah. Do the math on that. And what if nothing happens to you? You've wasted all that money in 10 years. So it's like, if you're just smart enough, why don't you just take that same money, put it into like a Roth IRA, maybe put it in the stock market, maybe diversify your portfolio somewhere. So that $400 a month you're spending on insurance, put that in a savings account. Pretend like you are paying Blue Cross Blue Shield. Yeah. And then in 10 years, if something happens, now you have that money as opposed to, like, I look at like insurance, even though we do have it, I kind of look at it like renting an apartment. Yeah. Or leasing a vehicle. Right. Sure, you can have the service, right? You're having that vehicle. But at the end of the day, it's not yours. That's not your money. You're literally renting every single month to a certain amount in hopes that your house might flood or your car might break down, because that's what the insurance is paying. You're paying in advance just in case something does happen.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
It's like, just put the money aside and save it.
Right.
You know?
Right. And these talks have happened a lot more now that we're in this lifestyle. And I know for a fact, I don't think this. I've gotten messages on Instagram. I've talked to people in real life, friends and so on. It has inspired others. And granted, other people have inspired us. So let's be clear. This is, actually it was people on Instagram that we saw that did it, that kind of sparked the idea. And hey, it can be done. And well, they got a number of kids. It's like, well, people with kids do it all the time.
That's right.
1, 2, 5 kids, whatever. It's just a matter of owning your life and the trajectory of your life. And that's not cliche. I mean, life is actually very, very short, very fragile. And I figure, why not do something that you, at a minimum, that you moderately enjoy, at a minimum. Ideally, you love it. Look, and I'm not the type of person, follow your passion. I'm not that person. I'm not, unless it eventually has to become your passion. That's okay. I'm not that off the bat.
Right. It's got to make sense.
It's got to make sense. Someone asked, we for Thanksgiving, we got together and the topic came up. What's something, a job a young person can do right now that in a short amount of time, he could be a millionaire? It was a little exaggerated conversation. A millionaire. I said, without even thinking much, I said, plumber. Easily, a plumber.
Yeah.
He could, if I need a plumber at my house in 2 days, I can't get it.
Right.
I can't. You cannot find a plumber. And I'm not talking about a guy to unclog a toilet. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a legitimate, plumber and maybe a million. Yeah, exactly. Like reassembling stuff, re-navigating the pipes, and everyone thought about it, and they're like, "Ooh, that's a good one, a plumber." I wouldn't want to be a plumber, they said. Ooh, that's nasty. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm talking about. When my water thing broke in the back, because we're on well water where we live, it's a little more country, not country. It's a subdivision, but it's spaced out.
Sure.
The guy came and fixed it. Kind of rough around the edges guy, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's my business. I own 7 trucks." I'm like, wow, I'm surprised to see you here. He's like, yeah, I had a lighter load, but years ago I thought, man, nobody's doing this job. I'll do it. Now I got 7 trucks, 50 guys working for me, and you're about to pay me $3,000 to do this.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, dang, why didn't I do that? But again, and he didn't love it at the beginning, but now he loves it.
He built up a passion. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
So you'll grow to love it.
Yeah, and I think that goes with a lot of entrepreneurs, right? That have that mindset is you just naturally have, because I feel like I'm that way with a lot of things. Like obviously podcasting is my passion, but when I was working a corporate job, I loved it. I worked harder. I asked questions. I networked. I did things above and beyond. In fact, when I was working, because prior to this, I worked at Monster Energy in the marketing department for almost a decade. So,
I've heard of that. I've heard of that little startup. Yeah.
Yeah. It's they're doing okay.
They're doing okay.
And listen, I mean, I didn't really drink the energy drinks as much unless like I was at a corporate function and you kind of have to at that point. But it's a really fun company, great people. And it just, for whatever, it didn't work out between us. But what was interesting about the entire career that I had there was when I was in the sales department and I was driving the van and selling to the stores and loading up cases and all that stuff, I always did a little bit more. Like I created flyers and posted them up, even though I didn't have to. I did like little things like that, and I've always been like that. And then, of course, as my career progressed and I got promoted, I went into management and the marketing. Even in marketing, I did a little bit extra where I used my camera because I've always been into photography, and I would recap videos. And then I would send those videos of like the events that we did. I would send that out to the department just as fun. And and then I was like, when I left that company, I was like, I've been doing the podcasting thing for a while on the side, and I've been doing this and that. And I was like, I'm just going to go all in on what I've been doing anyway. So I've been doing this creative content stuff on the side. And I haven't been able to commit a lot to it. So I just decided to go all in, and I don't know if I'll ever want to do a corporate job again.
Yeah, same. That's cool.
Yeah.
So when did you know, though? At what point? It could have been something that happened at Monster. I don't know. We don't have to get into that. But when did you know that, like, you're like, I can't do the Monster thing anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go in all in on this, because it is scary, obviously, all the cliche stuff. But when did you know? Was it one thing? And if it's something you can't share, I don't know, don't share it. But
no, I did a whole podcast on why I left, and because I didn't really leave. It came out of nowhere, and it actually relates to the podcast, and that's how I knew I didn't want to be with any corporate job again. I ended up getting one other corporate job just because the offer was way too good, and then eventually I got laid off because of the pandemic. So I was like, that's when I'm done. But for Monster, it was actually relating to the podcast because I shouted out a company that my buddy owned. And it was like a tea company. They had tea bags. And then when Monster found out about that, they were like, "Hey man, you can't talk about other beverages." And I go, "What?" Like, yeah, you can't. No, you can't. The only beverage you should talk about is us. I go, "Uh-oh."
That's the most corporate. That's the most corporate thing I've ever heard.
I was like, we got a problem. We got a problem here. But,
yeah.
So, and this is a decade in the company, and a lot of the practices that I built in my career, they started doing and they implemented into their workflow.
Wow.
I've spoken at corporate meetings and in front of hundreds of people talking about public speaking. They have a podcast now because of me. I started implementing and pushing that. So like all these little things to where it's like immediately they forgot, oh, this dude has been with us. This dude has helped us with XYZ.
It's crazy.
I was just a number. And it's not that big of a company. There's only a couple thousand people. And it's just fascinating how I was so close to the top and they just kind of looked down on me. And that's when I was like, this is a very successful, very fun, awesome company.
Yeah.
And they treated me like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to.
I'm out.
Yeah. Because what else is there? What am I going to go work for Geico? Like there's no, you're right. There's no, that's like the dream guy. I've always wanted to work at a company that had those values and it was fun and it was marketing and it was Monster Girls and it was this cool thing. So the fact that they weren't able to kind of be like, hey bro, maybe you shouldn't do that. Let's talk on the side, bud. Cause we got history, Tony.
But because it was so corporate, just
it's
cutting you off like that.
Yeah.
When I was at,
that's when it was for me.
The company Pioneer, they have all the DJ boards. So if you go to a wedding or event, it's probably Pioneer. Sure. I worked at that company, but on the automotive side. So they worked in the automotive side. And they have an office here in Detroit.
Oh, no.
Through that company, I got to visit Apple in Cupertino, California. And, they always say the less you know about your heroes, the better. The more you get to know your heroes, the more they disappoint you, right? That was so the case when I went to Apple, being on site, seeing the facilities, seeing everything, but seeing the culture, the work culture. Oh, I'm glad I own their products. I appreciate their products, but man, you could not pay me enough to work here. You could not pay me enough to work here. And that was years back. That was maybe 9-10 years ago. But I'll never forget it. I'll just
it's
never
worse
ever.
Now, I would imagine.
I would imagine it's worse now. I mean, you hear people about getting calls on their wedding day, and of course, I'm sure that's a little bit exaggerated for the internet. I get it, but even if there's a morsel of truth to that, it's still tragic. It's still awful. So it's things like that I'm just like, I wake up in the morning, and the person that I deal with as it relates to work is my wife, my spouse.
Right.
She sits right next to me here in the office, and we have coffee together, and we talk together, and we laugh together, and we argue together. You navigate the ups and downs of business ownership and life, and we still have one kid at home, so that adds a little bit to it.
Sure, that helps.
But like you said, where we're at now, I cannot see going back to corporate world anytime soon. I would never say never. There could be a good fit. But definitely not soon.
Yeah, and I think I'm probably, I don't even think I'm able to, only because I've talked about corporate jobs so much and trash talking them on those podcasts. I probably, even if I did, they'd probably come back to me in 6 months and be like, hey man, we've been listening to your episodes and we got to let you go because you were talking shit about corporate America. Yeah. But I also think this is where corporate America is lacking, similar to our education system, to where there's always this, again, I know this is a capitalistic mentality that you kind of have to have as a corporation.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like corporations now have to rely on creators, social media. They have to give in to TikTok. They have to give in to these new AI. That's another great example. They have to give in to like what's happening. They have to evolve.
Sure.
So because of that, you have to evolve your policies a little bit. And I think holding down the reason why a lot of people, especially like Gen Zers, don't want to work at corporate jobs is not because of the hours so much, I don't think. I think I think you could argue that Gen Zers actually work harder as well as millennials. They're just working a little bit smarter. And that's weird to corporations.
That is weird.
And corporations like where we've worked before, where they do ask you for blood, sweat, all that stuff. As much as it's important, I think you would get more bang for your buck out of every employee if you loosen the reins a little bit. If you let them talk about other beverages on your podcast, if you fucking let them go to their friend's wedding without bothering them, if you let them clock out at 5 p.m. and not send emails at 5:01, like if you do these little things, I think you'll get more longevity and more work out of your employees than the latter. And I think even the study out of, I want to say it was UK, what was the 4-day work week that they tested?
Yeah, absolutely. And that we just lived that. We were in France for almost 2 weeks and we talked to people there and
Is that right?
It's a different lifestyle. Man, we work way too hard here. Even as wedding photographers, we work hard. My goodness. We noticed so much there that we came back and we were like, look, we all, as a country, we make more. Let's be clear. We make more money than that. It's not even close. Like if you look at there's a disparity in average median income, but they don't care. Nobody cares. I saw the podcast you did with that Italian guy. He said, like, remember poor Italian? Like the poor Italians, right? They don't, I mean, they might be poor financially, but they're not poor. They don't eat poor.
They don't give a shit.
They don't eat poor. And they probably don't dress poor because even in the way they present themselves, they do it in a classy way. Yeah. But we were in France and it was the south of France, like Monaco and Aix and all these lovely places. And we realized that's a pretty well-off area of France. So maybe it was a little unfair, but we noticed little things like they're at cafes. They face the street when they're drinking their coffee to look at people. We didn't see as people on the phones as much. So we just saw that where we felt like either these people have really lax jobs or they're just putting more priority on life. We brought some of that back with us in the sense like we're going to be more conscious of it. We're going to not take our coffee to go as much, when we did that the first time in Monaco, they like laughed. They're like, oh, we kind of knew you were Americans, but now it's confirmed because they had to look for a to-go cup. They didn't even have one. Like they were like,
they're in no rush.
Yeah, they don't do that. They're in no rush. And we're such Americans that we bring a lot of good to the world. Don't get me wrong. I would argue more good than any country anywhere. But we also have bad practices that we're used to here. And it's just bad.
Yeah. And I think, Amadeo is the Italian dude that a good friend of mine. He's been on the show a couple times. But yeah, he's from Italy. He lives in Virginia now. And he and I have a lot of these conversations because it's fascinating to get the perception of like someone from another country that actually currently lives in America, because there is as you said, we are the richest. We are like, I couldn't host a podcast in Italy and be successful. It's just not. Their world isn't there yet. And I don't know if their goal is to be there because they're obviously conscious. Every country is like, oh, America's fucking inventing Tesla. Okay. Yeah. Oh, America's shooting off rockets and to go to Mars. Okay. Like countries know, but Italy's probably sent back saying like, okay, have fun on Mars. Like, no, they don't care.
They don't
about
care.
That. And that
100%.
that is the difference, I think, is because, and you need the innovation. We need the capitalistic aggressive mentality that America has.
Sure.
Because we wouldn't have the iPhone, we wouldn't have space travel, we wouldn't have all that stuff. But also, too, it's like we're always in a rush. Like I had this conversation with my buddy on my last podcast where we were talking about, cars are only 100 years old.
Yeah.
Right? Like the nation was founded 300 years ago. That's 3 people ago. That's great-great-grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
That's 3 greats. It's not...
Yeah.
We're
that
very
long. Yeah.
Yeah, we're very young doing this, like, species thing. Like, we don't.
Yeah.
But we're in such a rush to fucking look at us. We just founded the country 300 years ago, and already we want to go to a different planet. Like, what the if that isn't like in a nutshell what America is, I don't know what is, because we fucked up this country so much and this planet so much in 300 years, really. Yeah, maybe 400. I mean, depending on what religious belief you believe in. Maybe it was 2,000. Who knows? But we want to get out of it right away. Like, dude, we just got here. We just started.
We just got here. 100%. 100%.
So weird.
Something similar that Jordan Peterson talks about, and I don't care how people feel about Jordan Peterson. I think he brings a lot of great to the world.
He's great. Yeah, he's great.
He's great. But he talked about how, do you realize that men and women working together in the corporate space, do you realize that's like not even 70 years old? It's not even do the math, because we're in 2023, we can call it 2024. That really just started around the 50s, 1950s, not 1850s, not 1750s. And someone said, well, what do you mean? What did they do before then? And he said, they struggled together just to survive. But life hasn't even been good here in the US until like 1901. Right. That's when it started becoming decent. Yeah. And that's connected to what you just said a minute ago. Slow down, fella. Like, we just started figuring it out as a society like 100 years ago. Yeah. Like, we really, before then, life was abysmal for everybody. Mm-hmm. Only now is it great, and now is the greatest time to be alive for sure. No question. But like you said, slow down. Yeah. So how does that relate to today's world? We need to slow down.
Yeah. Well, and also too, I think we're bringing this into all facets of our life, but you look at like people up top, the problem is we're the consumer. We're the most important. These 33 million people here in the country, we're literally shaping the world. So like, if you think about, the food industry as a great example, where we thought milk was a great idea. Now we're realizing that dairy in particular is probably not the best, especially how it's being treated and thing. So what did? We as consumers said, fuck you, we're not going to drink your milk. So now we have alternatives, oat milk, almond milk, all that stuff. So now milk companies are like, oh, we need to come out with our own oat milk because that's what's popping right now. Yeah. So we've shifted an entire industry in less than 10 years. Yeah. So we're literally like, we're causing all this stuff to happen. So we have a lot more power than we think. And I think if we again, a good example is you talk about Apple. If we just all stop buying the iPhone for a year, that thing would drop to $500. Yep,
for sure.
It's all supply and demand. If we just stop buying houses for a second, just relax, interest rates would go down magically, almost probably overnight. Yeah. And if we just can control ourselves a little, but no, when the new iPhone comes out, we wait in fucking line like a bunch of jabronis. So of course they're going to raise the price. Yeah. Why wouldn't they? If the demand is so high and we're willing to like not pay our mortgage to get the new iPhone, then of course they're going to keep raising it, because that's the problem with the capitalistic mentality, is no one cares about the consumer. They care about what we're willing to do. And unfortunately, our idiot brain is saying we need this, we need that. Yeah. We like to have all the good stuff. So
my son's assignment that was on the table this morning before I went to school, he's in second grade, so they do easy stuff. He said, what do I need? Needs and wants. One side was needs, one side was want. But he said need is, I need air, I need food, I need water, I need love. Air, food, water, love, right? Wow. 4 things. And then on the other side, he had wants. It was funny, like a switch, a plate, switch. But the needs reminded me, like, damn, this list is actually pretty solid. Yeah, it's actually pretty solid. Like, you don't really need any. The last time I wanted something to get something, I don't know if you're like a watch guy or something. I think I saw an Apple Watch on your wrist. That doesn't mean you're not a watch guy. That's certainly a watch. But sure, I like watches in general. And
good resale value, especially a Rolex.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Earlier in the year, the brand Omega and Swatch, they had a what's called there's a watch called the Speedmaster, very well known, and they had a moon swatch collaboration, meaning like kind of an Omega Speedmaster but swatchified, and basically there'd be one for every planet. There's a Mercury one, there's the moon, everyone. And then, so this is the mission to Jupiter,
Ooh,
right?
Nice.
This is the one here. Oh, it's an Omega Speedmaster, but so I got the Jupiter one. My point is this, earlier in the year when they came out, there were lines out the door at select Omega and Swatch stores around the world. But you couldn't order it online. People were buying them because they're $260. That's it.
Right.
And then reselling them for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000.
Yeah.
It was like unheard of. You couldn't get it online. I think you still can't. Well, when we were in France, we walked by a Swatch store. I was like, I just want to see if they have one. Because if they have one, I want to try it on and we'll see, And they did, and I liked it, and I bought it.
Yeah.
But my point is, I wanted this back then, but I didn't need this back then. I didn't need to wait in line. It's a watch. It's a $260 watch that you could argue watches are superfluous. They have no purpose at all. I can just look at my phone. Fine. I'm not that person. I like to have a watch.
Yeah.
But that was not a need. That was a want. And I would argue a very delayed want. It was months until I never thought about it. I only thought about it when I walked by the Swatch store.
When you saw
but
it,
if we did that about almost everything, we'd be in a better place than we are today.
Yeah. And that's true with everything too. Like I feel like I find myself occasionally too, like, I don't know if you have like smart devices like Alexa, Google.
Yeah, we got some.
So I can't say her name because she's in my office. But so when we say that magic word, because now that we have a newborn, we have Nanit, and we hook that up to our Echo Show, and then it has the camera, so that way we can watch her whenever. So we said the other day, hey, her name, show me Cammy, which is our daughter, and it pops up the screen.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. But for some reason, I don't know. I mean, we've had her for 3 months, and it hasn't worked twice. And I caught myself when I said it buffered and it took too long and didn't show the camera right away. And I go, what is wrong with this fucking thing? And I go, hold on, wait a second. And I caught myself. I was like, calm down, Tony. This is a device that is showing you your daughter 5 rooms away, and it's doing everything via satellite that's coming from the planet above the planet. Yeah. Like, just calm down. It's okay. Right. I catch myself every now and then having those conversations with like self-talking myself out of it to where, dude, things are really good. Like, you shouldn't.
Amazingly good.
Yeah, man. There's not a lot of things that we should be upset about. And like, to your point of the need and the wants, there's not a lot of things that you should want. I mean, it's cool to have those things, but it's funny when we get those things, we forget about them really quickly. Or like we mentioned about the iPhone, we don't understand, like, on a daily basis their capabilities, and we take it for granted a lot of time. So when we don't have it, it kind of fucks with us a little bit because we're so dependent on it.
Sure.
And that's why I really like what you said about running without music and just breathing and focus on it. Because I think if you do little things like that, the only time I do that is when I go in the sauna, which is a very, very important time for me, especially after a workout, where it's like my meditation, where I just go in the sauna and I just, I do deep breathing. I really just think about the day. And sometimes it takes like 5 minutes. You get that rushing of like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. Like, you have to talk yourself out of it. But then once you get to like 150 degrees in that thing, you forget about a lot of things. Like, you don't give a shit about your emails or your work. You're kind of like thinking about surviving.
Sure.
And then you start thinking about, at least I do, I go into like this really deep stoic thought process, which is like, I'm just so grateful. Like, we got the baby now, I got the wife. Like, I get into this very nothing. And then I started realizing, oh, that's my needs. Like, when you're in those states, you don't think about the wants. And then that makes you really understand, okay, so what the fuck am I doing here? Why am I worried about this all the time?
Yeah. Well, I put a video on Instagram where it said, I was just talking about, if you want to know what really matters, just go to like a cemetery and see what the gravestone read. They never say, this was the best Microsoft Excel user ever. They always say like beloved husband, loving brother, caring nephew, or whatever. But no one ever says the other stuff. And I do, my dad passed away less than 2 years ago. It's coming up on 2 years. It's still very fresh and still, I still think about them all the time, every week. And I have a folder in my iPhone that says dad, right, with photos and stuff.
Oh, that's great.
And, but if I go to see my dad at the cemetery, it doesn't say like, oh, he was so good at like fixing cars or painting, which he was good at. Right. No, it was none of that. It says beloved father, caring husband, loving husband. And I think we just, if there's anything that I'm going to care about, and like from an earthly sense, I want to, the tools that I use that I have, I would want to pass them on. So for example, this is the perfect example. Like this camera right here is my current favorite. It's the X100V. It's very hard to find online. It's like back ordered, blah, it looks great, but it's also a great tool, right? I won't sell this camera. More than likely, I'll never sell it. And I'm not saying it'll outlive me, because it probably won't, shutter count and things like that. Yeah. But I could easily give that to one of my boys or my oldest daughter.
Kind of like a memento type thing.
Yeah. So in that sense, I like investing in things in that sense. If I can pass it down, and the things that I can think of that fall in that category are like 4 things or less. I can't think of many.
That's the time. That's the time capsule stuff. I think time capsule stuff is really cool to do, and that even goes with hours, like the amount of hours that I spend in a day too. Yeah. Again, the same buddy I was talking shit about, the amount of money he spends on childcare and health insurance. That same buddy, I was like, because he works his fucking ass off. He's such a he's like me, how I was in the corporate world, and he's younger than me too.
And he's in the corporate world, right?
That's right. And he's so good at his job, bro. And he's so passionate. And so, but he's got 2 kids. He's got a wife. Like, he hangs out with his friends occasionally. He just works a lot, answers emails, things like that. And the one thing I told him that really hit me, because I saw it on Instagram, as most of us get our information, it said the only person that's going to know you work a lot is your kids.
I've never heard that before.
And that hit me a lot, because, you always think to yourself, I got to work a lot for my job because I want to get promoted and I want to do this.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the only one that really cares how much you're working is your kids.
Right.
So how many hours in a day are you willing to say, hey, job, I'm going to give you X amount of hours, but I'm also taking away those hours from my kid.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's like that really hit me a lot. And that's going back kind of full circle to working for yourself, being a creator, and just finding your passion. It's like, if I'm making 50 grand less than what I would at a normal job, but I could spend 20 more hours with my kid a day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I
Is
could
that worth
spend,
it?
Yeah, dude, let's say it's
is.
kind of like a no-brainer when you have that option. Now, does that mean you're going to get the new iPhone? No, probably not. Does that mean you're going to get a brand new fucking Range Rover? Most likely not. Yeah. You're going to have to drive a 2003 Toyota for a long time.
There you go.
But dude, who cares? It is what it is. Like, what is the most important thing? And when you're faced with certain obstacles, like, I'm very sorry to hear about your father. We lost somebody about a year ago as well. My father-in-law.
Sorry to hear that.
My wife's dad. Yeah, it was rough. I mean, he was a little bit older, but we kind of knew what was going to happen.
Now, what's older? If you don't mind me asking, what's older? Sure. You said he's a little older.
Yeah, so he was almost 90.
So that's old.
That's old.
So that's old. That's older. So
that's slightly older than the average bear.
Some people are like, oh yeah, he was a little older. I'm like, how old? And they're like, oh, 62. It's like, dude, 62 is like, it's like nothing.
I'm almost 62. Yeah.
Yeah. We buried my dad on his 64th birthday.
See, that's young.
That's young. That's young, right?
To me, yeah.
And it doesn't change it necessarily that it's 90, like you said, like almost 90. That doesn't. I'm not diminishing it, but that certainly is older.
That's right. And I think the only benefit, if there is one, of losing a loved one as they're really old, like 80, 90, getting to 100, is you kind of know. Like you're almost, I don't want to say you're grieving, but I have no grandparents left. So I lost all my grandparents when I was probably before my 20s.
Wow, that's surreal to hear.
Yeah, a couple of them from diseases and like type 2 diabetes, and then Alzheimer's. So like I don't want to say I was grieving early, but like I think, I don't know I'm trying to find my right words here. Yeah. There's not a good time, obviously, but I think if they're older, you have 5 years, let's say, because if they're like pushing 90, at like 85, you're kind of like, I need to spend as much time as I can with this person, right? Like you're almost already kind of pre-grieving.
Yep.
As opposed to like, I'm sure with you and like for me, when I lost my grandparents when they were 60 as well, and I was a kid, it was almost like,
shocker.
and then I was like, fuck, I should have had, that tea with them the other day. I should have
100%.
So you don't get really the time to process things. And I would imagine with your father, that was probably
same. I went for the day he passed, I went for a run, and my sister called from when I came from the run and said, you need to come now. This is kind of it. What? What do you mean?
And you couldn't hear her because you had your AirPods on.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, damn, AirPods. The timing of that joke was good, because what you did was you full circled it. It was good. Like,
appreciate it.
Yeah, that was good.
I completely diminished your beautiful story.
No, it's good. It's amazing. And then, but it's about that. And it's like, I went there and it was like a bit of a shocker, right? With my grandfather. And it hit me what you said earlier, you don't have grandparents. I just realized, damn, I don't either. My grandpa passed away a month and a half ago, but same thing. He passed away at 92. Had dementia. We knew it for a while. So it was still sad because he came to this country bravely years ago. And that's why we're all in this country. We're Romanian. He's Romanian. We always said he's Romanian, but then he's got a lot of Hungarian in him. Point is, he bravely brought his kids and family here, and we have a better life for us. So we honor him for that. But when he passed at 92, it wasn't as much of a gut punch as when Dad passed at 63, right? Because you kind of saw it coming, right? You kind of saw it coming. But with all that said, I want to loop it to this. I'm not against the corporate job thing. I don't think corporations are evil. I'm against, and this is tying into the life and death thing, I'm against people doing jobs that make them miserable for a long amount of time and never doing anything about it. That's what I'm against. I don't think Monster's evil. I don't think Apple's evil. I don't think, well, maybe they are, but no, I don't think they're inherently evil, or it's evil or bad to work for them, because you can wake up and do an office job and do noble work. A lot of people do that every day. I'm not against that. I'm against doing it over and over, and it's killing you. And I'm not talking about necessarily physically, but it will eventually. But I'm saying emotionally and mentally, I'm against that. Because you say, well, what if I don't do anything? Nothing. I know, but if you don't do anything in 5 years, guess what? You're going to be 5 years older, and that's hard to do things 5 years from now. Like, you might be in worse condition, physically, mentally, emotionally. The time is now to start navigating away from that. Right?
No doubt. Yeah. And it's also your full potential. That's one thing I realized where a corporate job was holding me back, because I do have that entrepreneur mentality, and I wanted to do something else. And I think you just have to kind of identify with that. And that is the hard part, right? Of course. But I think it's harder to identify it when you are slaving away, because there becomes the pressure of like, well, you want to get promoted so you can make more money, but then, oh no, that means I'm going to have to be at that job for 10 more years. I'm going to retire there, and 401k there. And, what am I going to do? I'm at pension and all. And you're always thinking so far ahead, but little do you know that your corporate job is not thinking that far ahead with you at all.
No way. I never heard that before. What a great insight. That's good.
I mean, be lucky if they know your name. It's so you're thinking so much for them from a long-term standpoint, they're not even thinking about you tomorrow. And there's a great quote, I forget who said it, but they said having a job anywhere, having a job is a 2-week contract. They pay you every 2 weeks. That's it.
Yeah, I love that.
They can let you go any moment for any reason. In fact, when I did get let go at that job, I looked back at some of the contracts, because how they let go of me, I was like, there's no fucking way they're going to get away with this. I'm gonna take them down. Yeah. I got a lawyer and everything. And we looked into the agreement. The agreement I originally signed a decade ago essentially said, legal mumbo jumbo, essentially said that if I wore a red shirt and they only gave out black shirts, I could get fired.
Wow.
Like I said, it didn't say that in the agreement, but how they worded everything, it pretty much said, listen, man, they can let me go for whatever.
That's wild.
It doesn't matter. And
that's wild.
I would imagine a lot of companies probably 90% of companies have a very similar agreement. And you know, with this day and age, there's so many things that kind of get like looked at. I mean, you're under a microscope, especially with social media, all the time. I mean, I've heard of people get let go of jobs because of something they posted on Facebook. And you know, it wasn't like a controversial thing, but if it was a political or religious ideology, a company could let you go for that, and that's kind of fucked up.
It's crazy.
That's kind of fucked up.
Crazy
so,
times.
you know, why would you invest into so much into one company when they just don't care about your beliefs, they don't care about your values or what your goals are, or your family for that matter, right? Because you know they let me go for no reason, in my opinion. And you know, I had a kid. I had a kid on the way, and I got a wife. It's like, you know, you're not even thinking about that. Like, you just press one button and that's it. It's like, that's crazy.
I have a friend who got let go this week, laid off, and again, just corporate speak. It's nothing that they did. They make reductions to the staff because of, well, we want to align our strategy to the future and all that corporate talk. It's like, yeah, but bro, you didn't, like, Christmas is in a month. Of course you didn't think that. You didn't. I'm not talking about Christmas gift giving and buying. I'm just saying the time of the year, it's tough to be let go. It's tough to look for another job. They never thought of that. They never thought of that at all.
Yeah, the mental health aspect of it too. That's a big thing, where you're surrounded by loved ones, you're eating dinner, and you know, you're like, you're the only unemployed one now. It's like, and then you have to, like, it sits with you during that dinner. Like, I've been in that situation. It's not a cool. It's not a cool situation.
I have two where I was out of work for, I remember it was 3 months. It was 3 months exactly, like 90 days, and then I started working again on one of our anniversaries, the corporate job. And I did feel such a relief, but I knew the day I started, this was years back, I knew the day I started that, I said in my head, man, long term, this ain't it. This ain't the jam. Now, I didn't have the corporate or the entrepreneurial mentality as much as I do now. And listen, sometimes you don't have the entrepreneurial mentality until you have it. You don't have it until you have, oh, I'm not a runner. So freaking run. Learn to be a runner. Oh, I don't lift. Well, lift. Like, I have a pull-up bar at a doorway I walk through sometimes. It's in the basement, so I don't walk through it as much as I should. But when I'm down there getting something, do a few pull-ups. Oh, I'm not used to doing pull-ups. So do pull-ups. Like, do the things that, you know, and that's the same thing what I say to people with corporate jobs that dislike their jobs and maybe they want to do something with some other creative. Okay, so just start doing it. I don't know what that means.
Even on the side, just do it.
Even on the side, you know, it might not, like, you have to ask yourself long-term, okay, can it make money? But that's not the first thing you should ask. That's not the first thing. People, I do get questions from people in person. Okay, Dave, if you're so smart, well, what's the first thing? Well, how do I know what I'm good at? Well, and I would say this, if you can talk about it for 30 minutes with no notes, no iPhone, no internet, you're probably knowledgeable enough to do something with it. I don't know what that means, but I can talk about cameras and wedding photography without anything for more than 30 minutes. I can do it. Right. So it goes, that goes, that's a practical starting point.
For sure.
Like, I can't talk about how to give a fade, a haircut for 30 minutes. Like, I do it all the time. I'm going with my boys today. We make it a monthly thing.
Nice.
I do it with my boys all the time, but I take them somewhere. I can't speak to how to do it. I think I can, but can I do it enough to start a barbershop in 2 weeks? Probably not. So I'm not going to go that route.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you know what's cool about what you said too is, if you do know what that passion is, the best way to do it is just to start, to try it. And I always relate it to, like, just throw everything up against the wall, see what sticks. And 100%. That's exactly how I did this podcast thing, to where there were so many things, man. I started a YouTube channel, and I did like this thing that I called Tony Talk.
Oh, cool. I like
where
that.
it was like, but
it's cool.
What's funny is I didn't even think about this subconsciously, but it took me a long time to get there, to start a YouTube, to do that. And then eventually I did a blog, and then I was like, you know, I'm going to start a podcast. And then eventually it kind of morphed into it, but it was me testing the waters of different things to try. And then here's what's funny is, maybe like a year or two ago, my father converted a bunch of VHS tapes to CDs, which I have now converted to USB because it's 2023, Dad.
Exactly.
So, but I converted all that stuff, and it turns out when I was like 12 years old, I had like an old school camcorder, like a big boy VHS. And I would go into the mirror and I would video myself Can you guess what the name of my fictional talk show was when I was 12?
Oh my God. Tony Talks.
Tony Talks.
Amazing.
And I did not even, I wasn't even thinking about it.
Like if I had just been talking to you for 40 seconds now and I heard that, I'd call total BS, right? I'd be like, what a scam. This is just but that's legit. I know because you're not lying. I could tell by your voice, but that's surreal.
Yeah.
That's surreal. Like,
and
it's
I'm not lying, because when I do a vertical clip of this, I'm going to go ahead and throw up a video, because I have all the video, and I'm going to throw up a video of Tony with Tony.
There
Talk.
you go. It's amazing. It's amazing how that happens.
And, I think sometimes like that's the problem. We talk about school and corporate jobs. A lot of times like that, whatever we want to do, our passion, what we're good at, just kind of gets like pushed.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
it gets hidden.
Yeah.
And it takes you having the balls to just stand up and try something new. And then eventually I think that passion kind of comes back up, because we all have it. Like we all wanted to be, firemen or policemen or cowboys or Indians, whatever it was when we were a kid. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like when you're going to school and you're daydreaming about what career path you wanted.
Yep.
You're not able to pursue that, not because you're not given the opportunity. It's because you're stuck doing one thing and you're so good at something else, but you just got to try it a little bit. Once you try it, you're going to get good at it.
Yep. And listen, and you can make the money. And eventually, if you want to buy the Range Rover, I like,
for sure.
Again, that's not, I don't have the Range Rover. I have a Ford Edge, but I'm saying if that's where you want to go, have at it. Like, I'm not knocking that. I'm knocking the idea of never trying. Never freaking trying. Like, I just want that to die. I want you to try it, whatever it is, and just see what happens. But I'm not talking about for like a day or two. I'm not talking about a week or two. Really try. Yeah. Really grind it out. Because I learned from people that were far better than me at photography.
Oh, yeah.
Where I saw the gap was they weren't good people. They can adjust. They could tell me technically how to shoot, but man, you weren't that great with couples. You weren't that great with the mom of the bride. You weren't. And that's where we saw a gap. And that's a different conversation. That's more of a people thing. But just try it, because you never know where it'll go.
Yeah. And also, too, on that point, a lot of people don't try things because they think things are saturated. I run into that a lot, like, because I'm also a podcast coach. So I help people.
Oh, that's cool.
Like from conception, like logos and then literally coming up with the idea of editing and producing the podcast, cutting up vertical. So I do all that stuff. And a lot of times when people ask me, like, I had this idea for like a podcast, but there's like 10 others out there. And I go, newsflash, there's 2 million podcasts right now.
Oh my God. Who cares?
Yeah, who cares? And not only that, but out of those 2 million, only about 80% of them make it past episode 10.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
because people quit. People don't do podcasts. Man. Why do you think you hear about Joe Rogan and Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson and Jocko Willink and like all these podcasters, Huberman Lab, like all these guys? The reason they're so successful is because they're putting out content constantly. They're putting out podcasts constantly. And that's how you have to kind of treat everything as like, just because it's quote unquote saturated, there's only one Andrew Huberman. There's only one Joe. Like everyone starts with 0 followers. Everyone starts with $0 from their passion. But if you just keep doing it, you get good at it, you can monetize it. You just gotta fucking do it, man. Yeah, good.
Kudos to you. You also have a good cadence with your podcast, like the way you speak. The thing that kills me is when I get on podcasts and this might be nitpicking, and people who hear this or see this might be like, "What's this guy talking about?" The reason I want to listen to a podcast is because of the pace and tone at which they speak at. I cannot stand when they're mumbling for their thoughts. The worst is when the podcast host asks the guest a question that is totally not out of left field. It's a totally like fair, based, realistic question. And they struggle to find an answer. I'm like, did you not know that maybe he might ask that? She might ask that? Like, that's why you're on the podcast. That's why you're talking to them.
It's like they're shocked that question came up.
Yeah, and they go, well, I haven't really thought about it. Well, what do you think about? Like, what are you thinking about? Like, it's part of who you are, right? Yeah. So like we've talked about work, we've talked about family, we've talked about photography, and because these are things that I love, that you love, right? So
Yeah.
I that's the thing. So kudos to you because you keep it going nicely.
Thanks, man.
Like you and that is not easy. I think people have all this idea of being a podcast. And I even said on an Instagram story months ago, I said, I feel like starting a podcast because podcasters are annoying and they don't speak at a pace that I would want to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, and they the guests they have they can't keep up with them. Where maybe the podcast host is excellent, but the guest is like missing the mark.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, did you not know that they would ask that? Like I watched your videos before and I'm like, okay, I gotta be me because he brings energy. I gotta bring some energy, right?
You're doing a great job.
No, I'm just saying, like it's just the disparity I see. I'm like, and this is where it's a combination of self-awareness and excelling to be better. People lack those things.
Yeah, and I think I learned it a long time ago. I mean, my first episode was garbage, but now I'm on like 200 something episodes. But I think I've been a conversationalist for so long.
Amazing.
You know, I always tell people when they are scared to start a podcast, I go, the problem with like people wanting to start one or even listening to podcasts, as you alluded to, you're 100% right. Where a lot of people, you could tell it's forced. They're interviewing people. I forget what podcast I was listening to that was decent, but I was like, ugh, I wouldn't do it that way. Oh, it was What Now with Trevor Noah.
Oh yeah.
It's and I love Trevor Noah. I think he's great. His first podcast was with The Rock. He just started the Spotify podcast. It was good, but I knew he wrote down the questions. Not that there's anything wrong with that. There's a lot of podcasts
that's fine.
I get it. And, maybe his publicist with The Rock, because, they asked about like The Rock's and Oprah's Hawaiian, the People's Fund or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But you could tell it was like, they fucking, they needed to plant that. So that way The Rock could fucking sell it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And, again, I get it. I understand it. It's a big $1 million production podcast. But then I also look at like, I started a podcast not to monetize, not to ask questions. It was mainly to talk to people that I wouldn't be able to talk to and learn something from. Like that's the only reason I started the podcast. And my very first episode was my buddy who me and him were personal trainers before, and now he's an actor out in LA, very successful.
Oh, very cool.
And I talked to him only because I was like, I kind of always wanted to be an actor. Let me learn about it.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was episode 1.
That's cool.
So that's the reason I started. And I feel like if you can talk with a group of friends, as you said, for 30 minutes, an hour with a couple beers and shoot the shit, then you can have a podcast.
100%.
Because to me, that is the most successful podcast, is the one where it's like two buddies shooting the shit, bounce around ideas. There's no structure. There's no fucking... no. That's why I don't do an intro. I don't, hey, everybody, welcome aboard episode 220. David. I don't like, this is not a talk show. This is, I just want to get to know you and learn about your craft, and, vice versa to me. We can learn from each other. And that's kind of the best podcast, in my opinion.
I love that. So, and that's what I notice with podcasts, because I do listen to them from time to time, and it's all the ones you mentioned. By the way, The Rock was not very good on the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan made him seem very small. I felt as he was talking, and I only saw clips, so maybe I should go back and listen, or maybe I'll just take the clips that I saw and take it for what it is. Yeah, because Rogan made him seem very small, and he seemed like he wasn't saying stuff. He felt very like small on the podcast, and it's amazing the power of the spoken word. It's amazing the power of the spoken word, because you're right. It doesn't matter what you think of Rogan as a person. It's undeniable that his podcast is good. And I think the reason it's good is because he asks questions like you and I would. He just asks questions. He's like, oh, I think that's kind of dumb. Why do you think that? I mean, maybe not that, but that's why it's successful. And that's further proof that long form listening like that is not dead.
Exactly. In fact, it's not only is it thriving, but I think we need more of it, because
100%.
These conversations that, whether it's the school system that we're talking about, education, or we are talking about maybe politics, religion, wars, like all this type of stuff, it doesn't deserve a debate stage. It deserves people sitting down and having fucking 5-hour unedited, no ads. 100%. Like that's how we're going to move this country and the world forward, is having conversations like this. Because again, you know, the stuff that I learned, whether it was the creative aspect, starting a podcast, productivity skills, like all these types of things, I didn't learn in school. I learned listening to audiobooks, reading books, listening to podcasts, like guys like Gary V, guys like, you know, these type of folks that were inspiration, Huberman Lab, like all these guys that I listen to, that I instill my daily life lessons. It's through these mediums, and imagine if they weren't here. I personally don't know if I would be as creative as I am, because I gain a lot of inspiration, not just from a creative side, but also like health and wellness. Like I've learned and I used to be a personal trainer.
Nice.
I've learned more in the 10 years that I've been consuming health and wellness content than I have my certification.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because it's more like real life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
that's
again,
amazing.
It's like you think about like reading a school book that was printed in 1985 versus you give this kid an iPad and tell him, hey man, look up everything, you know, we need to learn in the curriculum today. It's what's better? The iPad might be better. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
and
amazing.
Then you factor in AI. It's like I'm terrified. Like, what?
Yeah. I just downloaded Chat GPT the other day, and my friend on Instagram said, "Hey, ask it to give you." I plan, hopefully, I'm doing the Detroit Marathon next October. It said, "Hey, ask it to create a program for you. Just say, create me an 18-week program for the Detroit Marathon." It spit it out. I was blown away. I was like, "Oh my god, this is great."
Yeah, dude, I'm a huge fan of AI. I'm immersed in it, and I'll leave you with this with AI. Try talking to it. Like, for example, if you said, I need a regimen I'm going to run the marathon, ask it first, say, I have a passion for fitness. I've been running for quite some time. I actually plan to do a couple marathons in the future. I'm going to ask you some questions. Are you ready? Make that the first prompt. Yeah. Then it'll say, I'm completely ready. Here's my plan. Go ahead and ask me what you want. And then you ask it the actual question. Amazing.
Yeah.
Bro, and the answer is 50% better.
Wow. Okay. So give it like almost like a pre-prompt, like prime it up a little bit.
Like talk to it like you're talking to a human.
Oh, that's cool.
That's fascinating. Amazing. I write a lot of my blog posts with that. I do a lot of stuff with it, and it's weird. So
amazing.
But dude, we're already at over an hour, by the way.
Yes, I know.
So
amazing.
So thanks for the time. Hopefully it's not getting pushed too much. No. But dude, this has been fun. We could probably talk for a lot more, so I might have to have you on in the future.
Yeah, dude, I'd be honored. I do have to say that this has been great. Again, I like this where there's not a lot of prep. There's not, like you said, there's not a lot of pre-game jazz. It's just two guys talking who have similar interests, families. It sounds like lovers of freedom, but lovers of hard work. Because let me say this too, when you do the creative aspect, you're probably working harder than when you had the 9 to 5.
Oh, for sure.
I'm certainly working harder, but it's way more rewarding. I will say, even financially speaking, we're doing better. So that will come. That will not come right away though. But I can assure you, whatever it is you're doing, more than likely it will come that you will be I'm not saying 100% guarantee.
Yeah.
But if you grind it out and you stay consistent with it, like you said, you will also see benefits financially as well. Again, not right away, but it will happen.
Sure. Yeah.
It will happen.
I always relate entrepreneurship to working out. You know, it's everyone wants to do 100 sit-ups and get a six-pack like Ryan Gosling. It's going to take time. But if you hit the gym every single day and you do what you got to do, you'll get there. You just gotta have to. But again, we're talking patience, right? And as if anybody's listened to this hour podcast, they understand that us Americans are not patient with anything. So that's hopefully
the Italians or French listen to this podcast, then maybe like it.
Yay, boppa boopity. Yeah,
they get it.
But listen, man, I'm gonna again leave your social and everything below. But if you can't give your social media shout out, your company, where can people find you and your services? All that jazz?
We're Dave and Angela, Dave and Ange Photo on Instagram _between them. But if you just type in Dave and Ange, you'll see us. A lot of our wedding work on there, but you know what? A lot of who we are on there. I don't expect couples to hire us just based on our wedding work. If we don't vibe as people, I wouldn't even recommend hiring us, right? So if
Yeah.
we try to share us, our family, and then davidanchphoto.com. And just look, we're creatives, just like probably the people listening, like yourself. But that's our life mission. You know, just try to encourage people towards something more that they can be. You're not limited to your 9 to 5, and you're certainly not defined by it or by what you do creatively. That's not who you are as a person. It's part of who you are, but it's not it. So that's it. Just encouraging people towards that.
Truer words have never been said. Dave, great job. You did amazing.
Thanks, my man. Thank you so much.
The crowd is going absolutely wild right now.
I like
Dave,
that, man.
Dude, thanks again for coming on the show, man. And I'll leave, I'll send you some email links of when this is all going to be up and all that jazz. But
thank you so much, Tony. Thanks so much.
Thanks again, man. Enjoy the week, brother.
You as well. Thank you.
All right, man. See you.
Bye.